My family celebrated my birthday at a bargain buffet and said, "Try harder next year." I snapped a pic and uploaded it, and 3 days later they were losing it in the group chat. 28 is that weird stretch of life where you pretty much stop expecting any kind of big birthday production, no balloon arches or fancy 3-layer cakes, and all you really want is for someone to remember you exist enough to call or text, or at least say something like, "Hey, you matter." But my family had always been oddly gifted at turning my day into something I'd rather wipe from memory. So when I woke up on Saturday, March 15th, the very first thing I did was grab my phone, only to see no motorcycle blast like some deranged alarm clock. But I wasn't really complaining since I paid rent on time, stayed out of debt, didn't ask anyone for help, and had been secretly saving money for a couple years for something bigger, maybe a small business of my own someday. And finally at 9 a.m., a text buzzed in from Linda saying, "Happy birthday, sweetie. Meet us at 6 p.m." Complete with a winky face, and I stared at that message for a full 5 minutes because the idea of a surprise from my family sounded suspicious, given the last time they threw me a surprise. It turned out to be a dinner invitation where I discovered I was expected to pay for everyone since "You have a job now." And I dropped $140 without anyone even saying thank you. But I tried not to be cynical and told myself maybe this time might actually be different, though it wouldn't be, and at 5 p.m. I put on my best shirt, a dark blue button-up I'd grabbed on clearance at Target and worn only 3 times, splashed on cologne that basically said, "A guy trying but harmless about it." Even combed my hair, and when I pulled up to the address Linda sent, my heart jumped up into my throat and then fell like a brick because she had picked Golden Corral, not a nice family restaurant or a steakhouse or even an Olive Garden with unlimited breadsticks, but a Golden Corral buffet where the food always looked like it had been losing its fight with time for days. And I sat in my car staring at the flickering neon sign wondering if maybe this was some weird joke or if the real place was somewhere else. But then my phone buzzed and Linda texted, "Where are you?" "We're all here. We're all here." So I took a long breath, turned off the engine, and headed inside where the smell hit instantly. A blast of fried everything mixed with industrial cleaner and something vaguely sweet that might have been cobbler or pure regret. And the fluorescent lights were the kind that make everyone look either partly dead or on their way there. And there they all were at a big table by the window. Linda, my dad Robert, my older sister Sarah, her husband Mark, my younger brother Tyler, and even my cousin Brooke with her trademark judgmental smirk, while Linda waved at me like she was in a parade shouting, "Caleb, over here, sweetie." And I walked over as they all looked at me with that expression that says we're physically present but mentally already gone. And I said hey with a smile, while Tyler muttered happy birthday without looking up from his phone. Sarah gave a tiny nod. Mark kept chewing, Brooke rolled her eyes, and Robert pointed toward the buffet saying, "Well, go on and grab a plate. It's all you can eat. Really pile it on. Get your money's worth." Well, our money's worth, and that pretty much summed up my 28 years, celebrated as an all-you-can-eat moment at Golden Corral. So I grabbed a plate and hit the buffet where the mashed potatoes looked a little gray. The fried chicken shined under heat lamps with a coating that might have been oil or some kind of sealant. The mac and cheese had grown a skin, and the green beans were floating in something that wanted to be butter but resembled defeat. And after loading my plate, I headed back where nobody bothered asking how I'd been, or how work was, or really anything at all, while Sarah bragged about the brand new Lexus SUV she and Mark had leased because we deserve something nice, you know. And Brooke ranted about her friends stealing her Instagram aesthetic, and Tyler kept watching TikToks loud enough to irritate everyone. And Robert ate like he was entering a competition, while Linda scrolled through the dessert options like they were ancient scrolls. And I sat there chewing rubber-textured beef, feeling like a background extra in my own life, until Linda finally reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope, the cheap CVS kind with my name written in hurried black Sharpie like she'd done it in the car, and she handed it to me saying, "Here you go, sweetie." We all signed it, and I felt something tighten inside as I opened it to find a generic cartoon cake card with happy birthday and Comic Sans, and nothing inside except a few signatures that read, "Happy birthday, hope it's great, Linda and Robert, have a good one, Sarah and Mark. Yo, Tyler." And at the bottom Brooke had written in her looping handwriting, "Maybe next year you'll do something worth celebrating," which hit me like a punch I was supposed to admire, and I read it once, twice, then again before looking up to see Brooke smiling and Sarah giggling and Linda chuckling like, "Oh, that Brooke, always such a jokester," and Robert laughing as he said, "She got you good." And Brooke shrugged and told me not to take it so seriously because I'm always so sensitive. And there it was, the word they loved to use whenever they wanted me to feel like I was the one causing trouble, while Robert nodded and told me to lighten up. "We're just having fun." That's what they always said, but as I sat there holding that card, I felt something inside me quietly split. Not loudly or dramatically, just a small, clean break. No anger, no tears, just this sudden clarity that they didn't respect me and probably never had, because I'd always been the backup guy, the dependable one who showed up when needed, paid when asked, and laughed at jokes that weren't funny. The person they called when they needed something, but never when they wanted to celebrate anything. So I folded the card, slipped it into my jacket, and pulled out my phone, which made Linda ask what I was doing. And I told her calmly that I was taking a photo, then held the card up so the message was visible and snapped a selfie with my face blank. The Golden Corral table full of sad buffet food behind me, and my family caught mid-chew, mid-laugh, mid-not caring. And when Sarah asked why I was taking a picture of that, I didn't bother answering, just stood up, grabbed my jacket. And when Linda asked where I was going, I said home. And when she protested about the cake, I told her not to worry about it, then walked toward the exit without a single person following or calling after me. And as I pushed through the doors, I heard them laughing behind me like I'd never even been there. And later in my car, I sat still for a full minute before looking at the photo again and doing something I'd never done before by posting it on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter with a simple caption saying, "28 years old, Golden Corral," a card telling me I'm not good enough. Happy birthday to me. Thanks for the reminder of who I am to you. Then hovered for a moment before hitting post, set my phone face down, started the car, and drove home with no idea what was coming next. And at 6:47 p.m. While I was sitting on my couch eating 2-day-old leftover pizza that had gone from questionable to probably fine, my phone started buzzing again and again until I picked it up and saw 17 notifications from the post. And the first comment was from my old college roommate Jake saying, "Dude, what the hell? This is messed up," followed by Sarah, a girl from my first retail job, saying she was sorry and that I deserved better. And then comments from people I hardly knew, friends of friends, strangers who just stumbled onto it, calling it heartbreaking and saying my family should be ashamed, mocking the idea of Golden Corral for a birthday, and calling the card emotional abuse. And within an hour the post had 50 shares, then over 200 by 8, and by 9 it hit 1,000, with people tagging their own families and adding captions like, "This is why I don't talk to my relatives anymore," or "Some families don't deserve you," and someone writing, "I felt this in my soul, stay strong," while another said, "You're worth celebrating, don't let anyone tell you otherwise." And as I watched the numbers climb, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, seen, not pitted or mocked, just actually seen. And then I even got a private message from someone saying they didn't know me, but wanted me to know what my family did was wrong, and that I mattered, and I saved that one. And soon my phone was blowing up not from strangers, but from my family, as the group chat I'd been ignoring lit up. Like a hornet's nest, with Sarah asking why I would post that because I was making them look bad, and Brooke insisting it was a joke and calling me sensitive again while saying it was embarrassing, and Tyler telling me to take it down because Mom was freaking out, and then Linda texting, "Eden, please delete that post. People are calling me. This is really embarrassing," and that word, embarrassing, hit harder than anything else because it wasn't, "I'm sorry," or "we didn't realize how hurtful that was." Just embarrassing. So I didn't respond and muted the chat, scrolling through the comments instead while hundreds of people shared their own stories about being forgotten or treated like an afterthought, and realizing I wasn't alone hit me harder than I expected. So I went to bed with my phone still buzzing because I wanted to hear every single notification telling me I wasn't crazy. And by Sunday morning, the post had over 400 comments and 1,500 shares, spreading through local Facebook groups. And someone had screenshotted it and posted it on Twitter, where people were saying things like, "This is why chosen family matters more than blood. You don't owe toxic people your presence just because you share DNA." And that tweet alone had 12,000 likes. And then my phone started ringing with Linda's name flashing, but I let it ring until the 5th time when I finally picked up. And she immediately snapped that I needed to take the post down right now because I was making the whole family look awful, and people were messaging her, calling Robert, and even contacting Sarah at work, and she demanded if I knew how humiliating this was. And I calmly asked why it was humiliating, and she went silent for a beat before saying, "Excuse me," and I told her she'd heard me, that they took me to a cheap buffet and handed me a card basically saying I was a disappointment, laughed about it, and now they were mad because people saw it, and she claimed it was a joke, and that Brooke didn't mean anything, accusing me of blowing everything out of proportion. So I asked why nobody was laughing now, and she sputtered that I was being dramatic and insisted this was just how our family is, that we tease each other, and I've always been too sensitive. And I told her no, they tease me, and I'm done pretending it's funny. And she demanded to know if my solution was really to put our private family business on the internet to humiliate them. And I told her all I did was post the truth. If the truth humiliates you, maybe you ought to think about why that is, I told her, and I could hear her breathing on the other end, heavy, irritated. And then she said my dad wanted to talk to me, but I told her to tell him I was busy, and when she said my name again, I just hung up, my hands shaking not from fear, but from something that felt a whole lot like freedom. Like I'd finally set down a weight I'd been lugging around for 28 years, and after that I made myself breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, coffee, and sat at my little kitchen table scrolling through more comments where people shared therapy suggestions, support groups, and resources for folks dealing with toxic families. And one message from a woman named Claire stood out, because she said she'd gone through something similar and was there if I ever wanted to talk. So I checked her profile, and she looked like a normal mid-30s marketing professional with a golden retriever named Biscuit and a bunch of hiking photos. And I wrote back thanking her because it actually meant a lot. And she replied within minutes saying family stuff is the hardest, especially when they gaslight you into thinking you're the problem, telling me that posting the truth took real courage. And we ended up talking for over an hour while she told me how her parents forgot her college graduation but threw a huge engagement party for her younger brother a week later, and how she eventually went low contact and never felt more at peace, telling me I didn't owe them my silence or anything at all, which hit me like a freight train. And by the end of the weekend, I had dozens of messages from people sharing their own stories, some heartbreaking, some comforting, all reminding me I wasn't alone, while my family stayed quiet for one day before proving they weren't done. Because on Monday afternoon while I was at work restocking TVs, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, and it turned out to be my Aunt Susan, saying my mother hadn't stopped crying and asking if I thought this had gone far enough because family forgives each other, which was rich, and I stared at it a long moment before deciding not to reply. But 10 minutes later, my Uncle Dave texted telling me my parents weren't perfect, but they loved me, and I should take the post down so we could all move on. And then my grandmother chimed in saying it must have been a misunderstanding and my mom had a good heart, all of them circling like emotional firefighters sent to put out the blaze without acknowledging what caused it, because none of them said the card was wrong or the dinner was hurtful. They just wanted me quiet and compliant again. So I blocked all 3 numbers, not to be petty, but because I knew they'd keep pushing. And that night my dad called, and I almost ignored it, but answered on a hunch. And he opened with, "You've really done it now, haven't you?" in this cold, flat tone like I'd started a war. And when I asked what he meant, he launched into how I'd turned the family against each other and devastated my mom, and made Sarah cry, and even upset my grandmother. All because I couldn't take a joke. And when I said it wasn't a joke, he repeated that tired line about me always being too sensitive and making mountains out of molehills. And when I asked if being hurt by a card that said I wasn't worth celebrating was a molehill, he said yes, because nobody meant it seriously, and I was the one who blew it up and embarrassed them. All online like, as he put it, some kind of, I don't even know what. And I took a breath and asked if he had ever once asked me how I was doing without it being a setup for a favor, ever remembered my birthday without a reminder, ever called just to talk, ever showed up for me the way he did for Sarah or Tyler. And he went silent, the kind of silence that answers for you. And I told him that's what I thought, that I wasn't taking the post down or apologizing for telling the truth. And he snapped, that I wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving. And I nearly laughed because I hadn't planned on going anyway. So when he hung up, I just sat there on my couch waiting to feel guilty or sad. But instead I felt lighter, and 3 days after my birthday the family group chat finally detonated with notifications climbing into the dozens until my curiosity won and I opened it to find total chaos. Linda saying she'd just talked to some woman from church who saw the post, and she was humiliated. Sarah complaining her boss asked her about it and how unprofessional it made her look. Brooke whining about strangers calling her toxic and insisting it was just a joke. Ethan telling everyone to chill because it wasn't that deep. Sarah yelling back that Eden made them look like monsters. My dad saying we needed to do damage control, and Linda suggesting maybe they should all post something together, like a family statement. And seeing that mess honestly made me smile for the first time in days. Or we could just report his posts and get them taken down, Melanie wrote. And I read every message while sipping my coffee, feeling nothing but this strange, steady sense of satisfaction, because they weren't worried about me or thinking for even a second about what they'd done. They were only panicking about their reputation, about how they looked to other people, which was classic them. And then I saw the one message that made the entire mess feel worth it. Sarah saying someone had tagged her in a comment asking if she was the same Sarah who worked at Morrison and Associates, and Linda immediately demanding to know what she'd said, and Sarah fretting about clients and her reputation, and then Melanie chiming in that maybe I should have thought about that before playing the victim online, and that word, victim, hit me like a slap, like I was making it all up, like the card didn't exist, like years of being ignored were just something I imagined. So I took a screenshot and saved it in a folder labeled evidence, not because I planned to do anything, but because I wanted to remember the exact moment they showed me who they really were. And then I finally did what I'd been wanting to do for days. I left the group chat with no explanation, no closing message, just tapped leave group and watched it vanish like clearing out junk mail. And the next morning I woke up to an email with a subject line that made me sit straight up. Interview request, local news segment, and inside was a message from a producer named Andrea Mills for a Channel 7 show called Your Voice Matters saying they'd seen my post and wanted to interview me, even offering to do it remotely. And I read it 3 times to make sure it was real before checking her credentials and the show, both legit. So I replied saying yes, and we set a Zoom call for Thursday afternoon, and I didn't tell my family or post about it, just went through my week like normal. Work, gym, reheated Chinese takeout, Netflix, documentaries about cults. Until Wednesday night when I got a direct message from Tyler, not the group chat, but a private text where he said he didn't blame me for leaving and admitted he didn't think the card was funny but stayed quiet because he didn't want it to get awkward, telling me I didn't deserve that and wishing me a real happy belated birthday. And I stared at it a long time because Tyler, the kid permanently glued to his phone, was actually apologizing. So I told him thanks and he asked if the news interview was real. And when I said yes, he replied that mom and dad were going to lose their minds. And he wished me good luck, something no one in my family had said to me in years. Then Thursday at 2 I logged into the Zoom call with Andrea, who was warm, professional, and genuinely interested as we talked for half an hour about the dinner, the card, their reactions, and the online response. And when she asked what I hoped people would take away from it, I told her I wanted folks to know it's okay to set boundaries with family, especially with family. And that sharing DNA doesn't mean you owe them silence. And she called it powerful before wrapping up and letting me know the segment would air Monday evening. And everything felt more real. And by Friday, somehow the news had reached my family. Maybe a call from the station, maybe online gossip, because messages started pouring in again with Linda calling 6 times. Sarah sending a long lecture about airing private family matters and how unacceptable it was. Dad warning me I'd regret this. And Melanie sending a laughing emoji and accusing me of milking it for attention. So I blocked them all, not out of anger, but out of pure peace, because for once I wasn't chasing their approval or trying to patch things up. And on Saturday, I treated myself to the farmer's market where I bought fresh strawberries, good bread, and a fancy cheese I'd never normally splurge on. Then went to a cafe I'd always thought was too expensive and sat in the sun eating eggs Benedict while scrolling through messages from strangers thanking me for speaking up. And one message from Claire stood out where she said she heard about the interview and was proud of me even though we hardly knew each other, telling me I was helping more people than I realized. And I saved that one too. And Sunday night, I couldn't sleep, not from nerves but from excitement, because for 20 years I'd been the background character who didn't make waves and swallowed hurt and called it peace. But now I was the story, and on Monday night when that segment aired, the whole city would finally see exactly what my family had done. And there wasn't a thing they could do to stop it. And that thought stayed with me as Monday evening rolled in like the quiet hush before a storm I'd been waiting my whole life to see. I got home from work around 5:30, microwaved some leftover pasta, and dropped onto my couch with the remote in my hand. knowing the segment was set to air at 6 p.m. during Channel 7's evening block. I'd only told 3 people about it: Claire, my coworker Devin, and Tyler, who promised he wouldn't breathe a word to anyone else in the family. At 5:55, my phone buzzed with a text from Devin saying he was watching and couldn't believe this was actually happening. Then another from Claire saying she was recording it and that I was already doing amazing. At exactly 6:03, after a commercial break and a feel-good story about a heroic dog saving a kid from a pool, Andrea's face appeared on the screen saying, "Tonight we're talking about family expectations, emotional boundaries, and what happens when a simple birthday celebration turns into a viral moment sparking a national conversation." And then my face showed up next. The Zoom interview playing with me, sitting in my apartment looking calmer than I'd felt while I talked about that Golden Corral dinner. And they even displayed the photo, the card, the buffet table, my family laughing in the background, as Andrea explained how my post had been shared over 10,000 times with thousands of people opening up about feeling overlooked or dismissed by their own families. And then it cut back to me saying that I just wanted people to know it's okay to set boundaries and that nobody owes silence just because they share DNA. And the whole thing lasted 4 minutes that somehow felt both endless and over in a blink. And when the broadcast shifted to the weather, I sat there staring at the TV, realizing I'd done it. I told the truth on actual television without apologizing, minimizing, or cushioning anything for them. My phone immediately lit up with Devin calling me a legend, Claire saying she was crying and that I'd been perfect, and Jake, my old college roommate, telling me he'd just seen me on the news and was proud of me. And then Instagram messages poured in from people I hadn't talked to in years and total strangers, all saying the same thing. "Thank you. This helped. You're not alone." And one message stopped me in my tracks. A woman named Patricia, 54, saying she'd spent her whole life making excuses for how her family treated her like she didn't matter, and watching me stand up for myself gave her the courage to finally set boundaries with her own mother, and she said I'd changed her life that night, which I read 3 times because I couldn't believe that just refusing to stay silent had done that for someone. At 6:47, my phone rang from an unknown number, and when I answered, I heard a shaky, familiar voice, my mom, calling from someone else's phone since I'd blocked hers, telling me she'd seen the news and sounding like she was forcing every word through gritted teeth as she demanded to know how I could do that to them on television and whether I realized how many people had seen it. And I told her plainly that people were saying she treated me badly because she did, and she fired back that they took me to dinner and gave me a card as part of celebrating me. But I said taking me to the cheapest buffet around and handing me a card saying I wasn't worth celebrating wasn't a celebration. It was an insult. And she went quiet except for that frustrated breathing before complaining that I turned everyone against them. Friends, church folks, even Aunt Susan, and that my dad couldn't go grocery shopping without being recognized. And I said good. Maybe now she'd understand what it felt like when people actually saw who you were. And she accused me of being cruel. But I told her I was being honest, and that honesty isn't cruelty. And when she asked if I planned to cut them off forever because they were my family, I corrected her by saying they were my relatives since real family shows up, remembers, and doesn't laugh when you're hurting. And when she pushed again, I told her I was done. Done explaining, done defending myself, done waiting for her to care. And when she asked if I was really throwing away 28 years, I told her she'd done that long before, and all I was doing now was accepting it. Then ended the call with steady hands and a clear chest because guilt didn't hit me at all. Freedom did. Over the next week, the messages kept coming as the video hit 200,000 YouTube views, and the comments overflowed with support. People calling me brave for speaking up, saying everyone needed to hear it, saying family isn't a free pass to treat someone badly. And by Wednesday, I got an email from a literary agent asking if I'd consider writing a book about my experience, and I wrote back saying I was open to talking. And by Friday, I'd agreed to 3 more interviews, a couple podcasts, and a regional magazine, because I realized this wasn't just about my story anymore, but about so many people who'd been made to feel invisible by the folks who were supposed to love them. 2 weeks after the segment aired, Tyler texted me saying he'd moved out and gotten his own place, telling mom and dad he needed space, saying they were furious but that he didn't care, and he thanked me for showing him it was okay to choose himself. And that message made me smile, because maybe I hadn't lost everyone after all. A month later, I celebrated my 29th birthday, not at a buffet, not surrounded by people who tolerated me out of habit, but at a nice downtown restaurant with Claire, Devin, Jake, and a few friends who'd actually shown up when it mattered, and we had steaks, good wine, and a chocolate lava cake with a single candle. And when they sang happy birthday, they meant every word. And when I blew out that candle, I didn't waste a wish on hoping my family would magically become different people. I wished for more moments like that. Moments where I felt seen and valued and celebrated, not because I'd made myself smaller, but because I'd finally realized I deserved it. 3 months later, Melanie posted a public apology saying she'd been thinking a lot and that what she wrote in my birthday card was hurtful and wrong, admitting she'd been trying to be funny and ended up being mean, and telling me I deserved better, and I read it twice before closing the app. Not because I was angry or holding a grudge, but because I didn't need that apology anymore. I'd already moved on, and I'd never felt better.